Hi, Social Mind fans. Thank you so much for tuning in to my second episode of the Social Mind. Today, we're talking about reflective thinking skills using real life examples. Now, many times persons probably get into arguments or they challenge other person's views, perspective about an event or an activity. And this sometimes can break out into an argument, which one may interpret it as causing conflict. And sometimes these conflicts break out into a physical fight, the loss of friendship, and in worst case scenarios, the death of a loved one. I have today with me Dr. Oliver Benoit, who is a sociologist at the St. George's University in Grenada in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. Now, Dr. Benoit, his areas of focus are comparative and historical sociology, political sociology, national identity, Caribbean studies, aesthetics and the visual arts in the Caribbean, and heritage and material culture. He has several publications such as A Sociological Perspective of Alcohol Use in the Caribbean, T.A. Marichaud and the Problems of National Identity Formation in Grenada, Heritage and National Consciousness, Bricks and Mythology and Metaphor. His most recent publication is The Education System of Grenada, the Place of National Identity in Educational Development. Dr. Benoit also holds an MFA degree and he is one of Grenada's leading abstract visual artists. Dr. Benoit, welcome to the Social Mind and thank you for being my guest on the show today.
Thank you, and I appreciate the comments.
Okay, lovely. So I want us to get to the argument. And we were talking about reflective thinking, and we are going to be using real life examples so we can connect with the audience. First of all, I want you to tell me or tell the audience what is reflective thinking and what is an argument.
Okay. I will say that reflective thinking is actually always referring to one's experiences and rethinking it. You want to ask the question, how could I do this better? What have I learned from my experience? Those are the issues I think is always important when we talk about reflective thinking. It is a way of learning from experience or thought. It's allows us to innovate new ideas and new ways of thinking. It is a process of creativity. So we must always reflect on everything that we are doing. If we fail to do that, we continue to repeat problems from time to time. So that's how I will want to explain it. And to take this to the point of the other question about argument, sometimes we argue and we think of argument as a way of settling scores, and emotionally we argue and we believe an argument is a fight. I want to differ a little bit. I want to say that we cannot do without arguments, because an argument could be about a discussion about events. It's a discussion about an activity. The reason for arguing is because we want to clarify our ideas. We want to improve on previous experiences. So we want to be able to connect reflective thinking to arguments. I think the problem in Grenada is that most of the time an argument is repeating the same ideas that we hold dearly, sometimes from emotion. And that, in effect, really prevent us from moving forward in whichever direction we intend to go. But we must always think of how can I benefit from this argument? How can it inform my thinking? How can it inform, or how can I create new ideas coming out of this argument? This is what it's supposed to be about. And it is important for us to overcome the emotional response that seem to drive our arguments from time to time.
Absolutely. So what you're saying is that arguments are necessary in our society,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
You want to jump in a little bit deeper and explain why arguments are necessary?
Well, think of it in this way. It is through argument we come to new decisions. And thinking of Grenada's society, when we get into arguments, as I said, it becomes emotional. I believe argument in itself refine any ideas, any projects. Let's use an example. If we have a project that we're working on, or even let's say take a school situation. If we want to learn, we may be involved in a classroom for that matter. It is not just simple just to sit there and take what the professor says and run with it. You might be exposed.
But Dr. Benoit, I might add that's how our school system is set up. It's rote learning, because if I don't mean to cut you here, but if I could recollect clearly, if you disrupted your teacher in my time, you were seen as being rude or a disruptive student, and what happened? You were sent outside. So what are you saying here, Dr. Benoit?
Well, and I guess that's the old-time way of thinking of it, because rote learning is in fact the problem in our education system. It is also the problem in our society, because we tend to want to take what authority is given to us without questioning it, without asking questions. And that's a problem, because we have to understand that we all have ideas. In a free and democratic society, we should not be scared of discussion. We should not be scared of arguments. The point is that we have to do it in a respectful manner. So if, for example, a politician or a teacher makes a point, we should be prepared to reflect on that point. And through that reflection, we will have arguments on the issue, because you've seen it from your own experiences, your own way of thinking. You are seeing it from that perspective. And it is from that point of view, you want to have a discussion with the teacher, with the politician, about the way we may want to move forward. This approach to me is refining and clarifying ideas in our minds. So no politician, no teacher could say, I have the truth. The truth comes from constant reflection of ideas. And that's how we build and innovate. That's how we create new ways of thinking.
So how do we do that in a civilized manner, understanding each other's perspective, and I suppose improving our deeper or critical reasoning? How do we do that?
Well, critical reasoning is an exercise of the mind. If we don't do that, we die. But and to put it this way, reflective thinking is a skill that you have to learn. And as you said, if we were engaged in rote learning, there wasn't any opportunities for our population over the years to learn about reflective thinking. So we have to start from the school system, engaging the student in the classroom to think and ask questions. We seem to kill our ability to do reflective thinking from day one. Because the way in which we bring up our children always to stop them from asking questions. And you must be able to ask questions. Questioning is an important part of one's humanity. You see things and you want to clarify ideas in your own mind. There's so many things in our mind that may not make sense to us. So we ask questions and we're constantly trying to understand them. And this is something we have to encourage. But think of what parents do to children from time to time. Don't ask me any question. Stop it. And sometimes even will...
I am the parent, you are the child. Yeah, don't
Yeah,
question me. Do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, that's
that's
correct.
part of the problem.
Absolutely.
Because the engagement in with children is important in developing that reflective ideas. You want to ask children from the day one to think of what you have done, not to beat a child to say this is how you must do it, but let's talk about this. Let's think of it. What has it done to you, or whatever the case may be? This is the approach that we need to take from day one. So the process of reflective thinking requires education. It's a skill that we have to learn, and it would not just come to us if we don't practice it.
Absolutely. So I hear what you're saying, Dr. Ben, but in the face of new ideas, because you mentioned that earlier, that's how we develop new ideas. That's how we have new innovation and invention, sorry. With the face of, how do we generate new ideas when we're faced with our old ideas? Because some persons are really stuck in their way. And no matter what you tell them, no matter how much information that you give to them, the idea is the idea, or the opinion is the opinion. Of course, everyone has a right to their own opinion. But in light of new evidence, new data, how do we really get persons to sort of move away from their own idea or adapt? How do we do that as a society?
Again, I believe this is a problem our society faces. You see, the thing about it is, to use an example again, probably you may remember that when we grew up in the school system, we learned that there were 9 planets. With new research, new ways of thinking, new innovation, do we still believe that? Even if the expert is saying that, they have revised that, I guess some of us will still want to, to argue that if you ask a question, you might still be given the same answer. So that's part of the problem that we face in society. We have to be prepared to change our minds. The whole idea of human society is, in fact, a constant looking for new ways of thinking, looking for new ways of doing things. So we cannot stick to old ideas. We have to sticking to old ideas is partly an emotional response. Just reconfirming my beliefs, and this is what I believe, and full stop. This is not how society works. If we live like that, we would not make any progress in our society. And to me, this is part of the problem that we face in Grenada. And I hope at some point in time, our education system will address that issue.
I want to elaborate on or highlight a point you make, because I hear what you're saying in terms of, yes, we need education, but there's also a social and cultural aspect of that, because you might learn one thing in the school system. However, when you go at home, you kind of force back into that particular space again, where you're not allowed to ask questions. You're not allowed to be a free thinker. How do we balance that? Because culture and one's socialization are strong influences of an individual and also a society by extension, correct?
Yes, we live in a culture, but and this is why culture is always changing. It don't remain stagnant, basically. The direction in which it changes requires probably leadership. And if you were to say that reflective thinking is a process where we constantly evaluate our beliefs. And that in itself, we have to be prepared to question. I mean, I do it in my art, as you mentioned, I'm an artist. I'm painting, but I'm looking at the process that I'm going through. I constantly innovate. If not, I would not come up with anything new. And this in itself changes culture, because new ideas help you to have different beliefs. And I'm not questioning the idea of people's belief, because we all have beliefs. The question is,
Correct.
how can I change my belief in the face of new information? And new information, as human beings, we constantly are solving problems. Problems come up from time to time, and our duty is to figure out how to solve them. Problems of humanity. We cannot change or solve problems doing the same thing over and over. So we have to be, that's why it is necessary to reflect on our ideas, reflect on our beliefs. So our beliefs are not beyond reflection. And in doing so, we will see deeper what may be the problem in that prior beliefs. And this is really what it is about. In my art, that's what I've been doing. The process of painting enable you to see different ways of doing things. And then you bring that into your own practice, and then you reflect on that. So you do it again, and it's going to be different. What happened if I was producing the same image all the time? It will be boring, I assume. What happened if we continue to replicate the same thing over and over? It would not be worth listening to.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the ability to switch and to pick up on issues and to go back in your mind and rethink those issues are critical for an individual. I want to take that idea and extend it. You might have answered the question already. You mentioned it, but I want to take that idea and extend it for a society. Why is reflective thinking significant for our society?
All right. If you think of our society, Grenada, and what we are attempting to do, whether it's at all level, community, household, even at the governmental level, we have to reflect on the decisions that we are taking. And if you think of the individual reflecting on their own ideas, think of the government, think of the family, reflecting on the ways in which I'm interacting with my children. Think of the way the government may be interacting with the society. What are we doing? What has worked in the past? What was the result of this action? Can we reflect on that? Well, it's even if it's positive, we should be reflecting on it. And I want to take it back to the classroom, because I'm saying that even if I'm teaching, it is not so much what I've said and what you picked up to run with. It's how can you reflect on what you've heard with the experience that I have had to see what I can take from this, or to see how it will impact my life. That's when the learning process begins. It does not, you don't really learn anything by just repeating what I've said, but you reflect on what I've said. And I think in whether it's government, whether it's at the home, whether it's at the community level, there must be a process and a period of reflection of the things that we've been doing in order to figure out what next can we do. That's how I think we have to approach it. So the question of reflection is something that we got to take very seriously. It is the process of living is also the process of reflection. And that's what we have to learn. That's how we have to engage with ourselves, not just with other people, but with ourselves. Let me reflect on the way how I approached this class today. And not that this class I did was in fact horrible. It may well be good and everybody probably enjoyed it. But let me reflect on it. What is it that I got from it? And what else can I get in the next class going forward? And in that process, you will always have new things to engage people with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in that, just to wrap up right now, in that way, I suppose that's how, because you said culture is always changing. So when we reflect, that's how our cultures, or the emergence of new cultures, or the synergies of other cultures come into play, because we take what is good, and I guess we mix and we match, right?
Yep.
And so we have that improvement in our society. How do we get, I suppose, Grenada to that place? Again, I want you to repeat. I know it's been repetitive, but I'm making a point. How do we get our nation and its people to that place of being reflective, of being critical, of taking, about not being emotional? We are all emotional and social beings, right? However, I suppose when it comes to the arguments, or when we come to dialogue and having conversations with each other, how do we get there together as a people? My final question before we wrap up.
Yes. I guess the problem that you're getting at is that we've always seemed to have a problem interacting with each other. Politicians, teachers, student relationships, community
Friends,
engagement, and
family.
So on. And, family. And I think in your opening remark, you mentioned that people can die by engaging in arguments that seem to end up in a fight. I mean, I think it's important to reiterate the point that we want to. We don't want to see argument as a fight, but argument is supposed to be a strength of any society where we engage in that kind of dialogue that generate new ideas. Because in the Grenada context, what we're trying to do really is to develop the country. And it does not matter how much money we throw at a problem. What matters really is how we able to innovate in the society to become independent. We cannot have independence in the true sense without innovation. And to stress it a little bit, in today's world where let's say social media is all over us, the abundance of news and ideas and so on, we run the risk of just following anything that thrown at us. And it's in this context we require a greater level of reflective thinking, because in that, if we engage in more reflective thinking, we're able to look at what makes sense, and even in that context, revisit our ideas on the foundation on which our ideas are based. We also have to revisit that. Because if we revisit it in a serious way, we may find out that this hasn't worked for us, and therefore this is, and then there's going to be a problem. So I believe we cannot develop any society without without creativity, and creativity is what drives innovation. And whatever we have here, sometimes we talk about not having the resources, but in any given society, there are resources. It may not be what the other country has, but what we have, if we think of it, if we engage in discussion about what we have in a humane way, we may well find ways we can use our resources for the development of our country. And indeed, the development for family relations or the individual, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Dr. Benoit. Before I let you go, is there anything else that you probably wanted to add to clarify our discussion here today?
I think it's the issue of asking questions and how do we encourage our children to engage in discussion with us rather than believing that we are the authority and what we say must always be respected. respect, we got to revisit the whole idea of respect. What does it mean to respect each other? And how can we have discussions among ourselves within the community, within the society, without becoming emotional and feeling that one should not have the right to ask questions, or this question is not for a child or not for the layman on the ground. Regardless of those differences we may have in society, we should encourage discussion, because every single person, based on their experience, will have some kind of ideas that might be valuable. And we have to engage in that kind of discussion with people. I mean, the underlying point here is that, as you say, as a teacher, I am also interested in learning. I am not just imparting, ideas. I want to learn from students. Students have
students, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to learn from it. It will be boring for me if I'm not learning something new. I think as human beings, we are curious people, and we want to learn. We want to have new ways of seeing things, because I think it's the essence of life in a way, and that's how we use our mind. Just as I said before, reflective thinking and arguments, in fact, is an exercise of the mind. As a human being, that's what matters. And it might be also a health issue as well, to think of it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Benoit, for coming on the Social Mind and imparting the knowledge that you have today. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Social Mind. As you continue your week today, I want you to be reflective in your actions, be reflective in your thinking. Whatever you do today, do some introspection and ensure that, okay, how can I do it better? How can I work smarter and not harder? So thank you for tuning into the Social Mind.